Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about questions. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how should I ask good questions when reaching out to my coworkers for help? Well, that's a broad question. Uh, how I'm assuming you mean how you make yourself understood and how you make people understand what you're trying to achieve. Uh, so the way that I usually do this is that I try to teach people how to write a good tutorial. And what I mean by that is basically that a good tutorial or a step-by-step guide is one that has a context. Because when people, what people usually do, which is very silly for a programmer to do, is that they assume that by just writing down what to do in loosely defined terms, as an example, go to website A and log and enter credential B and then click button C. When you say that, you assume that people know what website A is, what credentials B are, and where button C is. And that assumption is similar to how if you're going to be a teacher, if you say, oh well, then just apply algebra to a class of math students, you are assuming that they know what you mean, and that's not a good way of teaching people things, or that's not a way for people to understand you. The way that you make people understand you and understand your perspective is by basic storytelling. And the basic part of any story is that every story is a journey. It has a start, a goal, and well, it does have an ending usually, but the start and the goal, or like the problems, and then like what you're wanting to achieve and so forth, that's part of it. So if you think about it as a journey instead, you have to understand that if you think about practically every movie you've ever been part of, or any book or anything, any story you've ever been told, so you enter the life of the main character at some point, which is a segment of that individual. Now, in order for the story for the story to make sense to you, you have to, through some type of process, understand the steps that has taken place before, in order to understand your character, because that's what the personality is about, right? It's not usually some random person that you know nothing about. That doesn't give you a connection to the character. You have to somehow, as a storyteller, let people know what type of person is this, well, who the protagonist, who is this person, right? And for you, when you are trying to ask for help, someone has to understand what it is that you are trying to achieve and how you have been going about it, in order for them to be able to help you. And this is, you have no idea how often I have people that I work with that has this problem. Just yesterday, one of my coworkers, he's been tasked with setting up end-to-end testing for our team, and it has taken weeks. And I don't know, it's getting to the point where it's almost frustrating, where he has he reached out to me. Well, he basically asked me the other day, like, I don't understand how to do this, because we requested that he set up a end-to-end test as part of a blue-green deployment. And this is a guy who has years and years of experience, and I asked for, I thought that the scope was very clear. And so what he did was that he explained to me that, no, the operations people, they say that we can't do blue-green deployments. And so I asked him, why would they not be able to support blue-green deployments? Well, I asked them if we could do blue-green deployments, and they said no. And I go, okay. That's odd because we're using Kubernetes and a rolling strategy is like the default. So how can we not do blue-green deployments when we're actually already using blue-green deployments through Azure? In this case, it's Azure. It's already happening. So why would we not be able to do it? It's already happening. And then he got really confused, and it turns out that this person doesn't actually know what I'm talking about. He's just said, yeah, I understand. He did not understand, very clearly not understand what we were trying to achieve. And when he went but he still managed to go to our operations people, ask them, without any context, without actually explaining what we're trying to achieve, he could not express himself to the operations people in a way where they understood what he was trying to do. So they said that they can't do the thing that he's asking for, because when I went and talked to them, they understood immediately. And the way I did it is very simple. I tried to tell the story of what I started doing, what I have been trying to do, why I'm doing it, and what I'm trying to achieve, and where the problem is. When you give people the context of what you are doing, you are allowing other people to understand your thought process. It's the same tip I give people when they're interviewing candidates. If you simply ask what is 1 + 1, and they say 2, then you have no understanding of whether or not they understand mathematics, that you only know that they know the answer. What you want to do is to ask them things such as, in your experience, what is a good solution to this problem? You want them to actually elaborate a little bit and walk you through their thought process. So as an example, when I reach out to my coworkers for help and I need some guidance, usually I can give you an example. I think I can still remember the conversation. I was explaining, my coworkers asked me at one point related to a bunch of REST clients that we were making. They asked, why did you hand make the REST client? And I explained, well, so when I first started, I noticed that practically all of the integrations that we are making, we have like 13 something integrations in this specific system. The documentation was actually very spotty, and sometimes I was lucky and there was like an open API spec or something like that, and I thought at first that maybe we could like generate the REST clients, which would probably have been like the ideal case, which they suggested to me. But the thing I also noticed was that all of the documentation was actually very bad. Like most of it was actually, in many cases, we didn't actually have access to the documentation. And I also noticed that we didn't just have REST integrations. We had a few others that was like non-standard, if that makes sense, and they didn't actually have a file to use in the first place. So I figured rather than creating a generating solution that I know will only work in certain circumstances, because I still need to cover all my bases, I need to be able to fix integrations for all of the different systems that we connect to. But since I can't trust that there will always be an open API spec, I didn't want to opt in to a REST client type of thing, right? So what it instead was that I thought, all right, let's just because ideally they should generate all of our clients for us, but they're not, and they're probably not going to, because we have a lot of different teams we're dealing with, right? So my thinking was very simple. I thought, okay, let's just make the actual implementation of the REST client. Let's create a base abstraction that does most of the network stuff and so forth, and then create a simple function that just takes an object with all of the, the path name and the host and like all this stuff, the basic stuff, right? And create a copy-paste solution where the person who's implementing the REST client can very quickly and easily do so without a lot of extra effort. And that's pretty much it. So what I just did was that I explained the journey that I took that led me to the conclusion or to the question or whatever that I have at this moment. And the reason why I do that is because now I give enough history and enough context to the person I'm asking for help or asking for feedback from, so that they understand the motivation or what I'm trying to achieve and why I'm trying to achieve that. And the beautiful part about that is that in many cases the person will now understand if my thoughts have been correct. Maybe I didn't think about this the right way, or maybe I missed something in my reasoning, or at the very least they're going to have the most likeliest it's much more likely that they will be able to derive, okay, what goal am I trying to achieve, and whether or not my question or whatever I'm trying to do is the right question to ask. In some cases, they actually realize that, actually you're trying to do this thing here, but the thing that you actually want is that thing there. But in order for them to get to that point, I can't just tell them, oh, I need you to do this or that. I need to actually explain to them why I'm trying to achieve the thing that I'm trying to achieve. So what I want you to take away from this is that a good question is like a story. You have to give enough context to the person who's listening so that they understand why you're asking the question. Why is this relevant to you? And that is a very important part, that if you leave that out, you will be less effective at all communication. And the trick is, my friend, to know how big to make a question, which I very often make very difficult. It's very difficult for me, because if the person knows exactly what you're talking about and you go on like a 20-minute rant, or in this case 11-minute rant, then it seems silly and I seem like a blabbermouth or something like that, and they get annoyed and just try to skip to the end because they already know what I'm going to ask and why I'm asking it, so they understood, and now I'm just wasting words. But in many cases, especially in technical matters, it's better for you to take that bet and just give me enough context so that they understand what your journey has been so far and where your problem right now is, and what you're trying to achieve. Because if you go about it that route, they understand your thought process, and when they do that, it's so much easier to help somebody out. Have a great day.